brings up a lot of emotion. You certainly feel like you're part of something special, you're connected to it. It's very distinctive, certainly very mechanical.
The Germans make things beautifully, and they just happen to go extremely well. They are just a fantastically practical sports car.
To me, they're just a cool car. They're all race cars. They're all built for a purpose. It's just that whole German engineering sort of thing about it.
It was the noise. That's what drew me to Porsches when I first got into them. I remember distinctly at my high school a 928 that used to arrive to pick somebody else up, and the purr that it had was just wonderful.
The sound of a flat six is very different from the sound of anything else. The air-cooled cars are particularly special because being air-cooled, there isn't that water jacket around the engine block which absorbs some of the noises. So they've got a mechanical thrashing that is all their own, and you hear that even at low revs. You can hear that they just sound different, and they sound more mechanical than just about anything else.
I just like the shape of them. I like the fact that they're very simple, right? I mean, the original cars, the G-Series cars and the cars before that, they're very simple in their design. And I don't know what it is, but it's something.
It's a combination. I just love the function. I love the purity of the design. There's that real classic element to it, which I'm drawn to. I'm drawn to things that are quite clean and minimalist.
It's almost no matter what Porsche I'm driving on a road test, children to grandparents all like to have a look. So, driving them, it's something special. It's a different kind of car.
There is a real passion there around the marque and around the fun that it gives us in terms of ownership, experience.
I don't know, I think there's just something unique and different about them. The whole idea of rear engine, rear wheel, for most of them I suppose. And the feel of, you can jump in an early one, like say for instance an early 911, you can jump in one of those or right up to a GT3, you can still feel the difference or feel the power come through the wheels, every little bump through the steering wheel.
It's really exhilarating. Driving down Curl Straight with, a classic Porsche, just looking out and there's the ocean on the left side, and it's just unbelievable.
To some, things might be a bit basic, but it's right at that point, just before it touches that rev limiter, that you really know that you're alive. I remember when I was at school, I did a class called Power Mechanics, and it was really the only thing I was good at school. My careers advisor at school said, oh, you know, I'll see if I can get you a gig at this workshop. I didn't know until I actually turned up that it was actually at the Porsche workshop.
Grant came along into the network as an apprentice, so I taught him through being a head mechanic and also through my workshop manager.
For the whole week I was there first and I left last. I just couldn't get enough of it, and I thought, this is really great. So I said to the workshop foreman there at the time, how do I get a job here? This is the coolest place on earth. By the end of that year I'd already had the job lined up long before I'd actually finished school. Back in those days there was a fair bit of mucking around with the poor old apprentices. I remember being sent down the road for a left-handed spanner. They also tried the old can of stripy paint.
Grant got offered this business down here, and then after a couple of years he rang me and said, would I be interested in coming down? I was his boss, now he's my boss, and you know, it's been a long relationship and it's been a good one.
I've just always liked the shape of them. And they're something that will never ever go out of date. They don't age. Yeah, when my kids grow up, Porsches will still be fashionable.
30-something years later, I'm still working on the product because I absolutely love it. You know, it speaks for itself. It's a reliable car, and the people that own them are total enthusiasts.
My granddad gave me my first car. When I was 16, I couldn't even drive it. So I spent that first year that I couldn't drive it doing it up and looking after it. And I used to sit in it and talk to him. I had a deep affection for my granddad. I guess that's where my sort of relationship with cars started. I always have a lot of affection for my cars, to be honest. And I literally talk to them, as silly as that may seem. I was the kind of girl that had posters on the wall in my bedroom of cars as opposed to the local pop stars. My first Porsche that I owned is the one that I still own, which is my 968. She was the car that started our relationship with Autohouse. The whole team there, especially as a woman, they don't treat me as if I'm dumb and only like the colour of the car. Having Grant look after our cars has made owning a Porsche more like just owning a normal European car in terms of cost. I don't think you need to spend more money on a Porsche. I think you need to find the right Porsche for you and really love it and enjoy it and spend time in it and have somebody look after it. The 968 was our second car for a very, very long time, and I always call it the world's most practical Porsche because it's got a fantastic boot, it's got decent sized bucket seats in the back for the kids, and the kids were comfortable in that seats until they were a good 6-7 years old. I bought my husband a 996 911 Turbo. I happened to see that there was one online, and when I saw the background I thought, I've got a feeling that's Grant's workshop background. So I rang him and said, is this one of yours? Can I come down and see it? He said, Nikki, you can come down and drive it. Between us, we arranged the whole secrecy of buying the car for Darren without Darren knowing. Thankfully, I control the bank accounts and stuff at home, so I was able to sneak the money out. That's his toy as far as I'm concerned. I do pinch it every now and then, and he does let me take it to a nice lunch or something like that. It's beautiful, but it's insanely fast.
Ian kept visiting Porsche Centre Willoughby where we were there, and he kept walking into the engine room where I spent a lot of my time back then and keep saying, you know, you should be coming and working for me, you should be coming and working for me. And at that time I just basically said, well, when you want a partner and not a worker, come and see me. There was a guy by the name of Miles Sandy who was one of the mechanics there, had his own rally car, and he asked me to come and help, so I started helping him, and then I got heavily involved in rallying and in particular co-driving myself. I was taking holidays and my annual leave and competing in rallies in Australia and New Zealand and some in Asia. I probably owe this part of my history or career to a guy by the name of Wayne Bell, and I was sitting in Wayne's lounge room, and it was a decision that had to be made between working for him at Hyundai Motorsport and doing Asia Pacific rallying, or come and be part of Ian's business and Ian's organisation and buy into that. And Wayne sat me down and basically said to me, mate, go and buy a business, don't come rallying, because rallying is only it can be a short-term thing, and he could only offer me a 1-year contract. So decision was taken to come and buy part of Autohouse Hamilton and be part of that.
In 2005, I finally got to a stage in my life where I was, comfortable enough to think about going rallying as something that I'd always wanted to do. I was given Grant's name and I rang him up and I said, listen, I'd like to go rallying. I'm thinking of Targa Tasmania, but what I really like is gravel rallying. And he said, me too. And he said, I just happen to know the car. It's a 1972 RS replica, sort of. It's a narrow-body car. Grant was part of the build process in 1999, and it was built for the 2000 London to Sydney Marathon. This car was available, we were able to do a deal to buy it, and then the rest is history. Grant did the normal Grant thing where he sits you down and tells you, why you shouldn't be building this race car, and now it's going to cost you an absolute fortune. And through that process, we understood that, or he learnt more about me and the fact that my real passion was going gravel rallying. So we found this car, or he knew of this car being available, and the fact that it had been built specifically for gravel rallying. And so he got it to his workshop and we went for a drive together. And as we were driving around, I said, the only problem is I've got no one to sit in a co-driver's seat. If I'm going to go gravel rallying, I need someone in the co-driver's seat. Well, I'll sit with you. Grant had a lot more talent than I did. As a co-driver, he was outstanding, and he kept telling me to go a bit harder and faster. It was great fun, and I just, said, that's it, we're going to do this for some time to come. The thing you learn as a driver with the co-driver is just to say, yes, sir. One of the great things about Grant is he has an opinion. He's incredibly enthusiastic and passionate with what he does and with rallying. And for the most part, I just defer to his decisions, although we have had a couple of set twos and Barneys and, gone toe-to-toe from time to time. And occasionally we have to remind each other that the light in the forest is beautiful and it doesn't matter where we're coming.
I've had a few, I wouldn't say near-death experiences, but we've certainly had a few moments. That happens when you're pushing and trying to win. You're always going to, if you're not having moments in motorsport, then you're not trying hard enough. That's my take on it all.
Grant and I were in a very long marathon rally in the South Island of New Zealand, and we were in day 3 or day 4 of the event. We'd had a very long section with a very poor road book, and Grant said, in 300 metres I want you to go left at the K intersection through that gate, and I didn't slow down. And we hit a rock on the outside in the snow and rolled over into the creek on our roof and slid up the creek with the windshield inside the car. Fortunately, the car was okay. We actually rolled it onto its wheels afterwards and got it going again, and then for my punishment, I drove 150 kilometres in a blizzard. Every time we go out, we just try to make them easier to drive, because in a rally, when you're doing 50 kilometres down a dirt road, it's very tense. It's incredibly draining from the point of view of the concentration that's required both for the co-driver and for the driver. And so the best thing we can do is to make the car as easy to drive at all times, so that neither of us are uncomfortable with what it's doing when we ask it to do something.
The rally car that we've built for Jeff is pretty special. It's a pretty amazing car. It's probably the thing that also scares me the most.
It's only the pilots who aren't scared that are having crashes. And I think the same is true in any form of motorsport. If you don't have a little bit of self-preservation, then you will go off and you will have a crash.
The best project I've worked on would probably go back to the first Targa car that we built for Grant as a navigator and the customer, which was a genuine Australian delivered 3-litre Carrera.
Every nut and bolt was taken out, thrown away and started again with a clean sheet. Some of the body panels too, things were cut up and opened out, and such contrast in its original format really, but there was not suggesting Porsche got it wrong, but it's just to adapt it for this situation that made it something quite special.
Bill's my original motorsport customer. He was the guy that came to me first, and we've had a very, very colourful and long-standing relationship, I guess you'd say.
This car, the 74 RS that we're sitting in, Grant and I built specifically to win Targa Tasmania and beat Rex Boardbet. We unfortunately never achieved that, but we came second to Rex in Targa, and we won the classic competition in Targa in this, and we were second outright. It was built from a body shell. It's a genuine wide body Carrera. It's built with an extremely strong roll cage. We were told by the builder we would die before it deformed. It's a 3.6 litre motor, which was the maximum size engine that we could run in tarmac rallying at the time. It's built specifically for tarmac, so that it's not a high revving engine. It really doesn't like to rev much over 6,800. It's got a lot of torque and low down grunt, so that it really gets off the mark quickly, and it goes up hills and it pulls out of corners. It's not a circuit racing engine, and it's got about 350 horsepower, I believe.
trouble that last lap.
I
I noticed the lap before
I really-
you had a slide through the sweeper and you got him quite cleanly, and then the last lap I thought,
I'd saved enough in the tyres to really
Oh, yeah.
punch it through that real tight section.
yeah, because you gapped him.
I throw a new set of tyres on it. Well, we're not in the points.
You actually allowed six tyres.
Oh, am I? Yeah. We'll put 2 new ones on the back. Yep. Pick the best for the rest.
Yep.
In regard to the finish of the car and the way it's been built specifically for functionality, really. Grant and the Autohouse boys have done all this. I mean, it wasn't really my input. Remembering that the car was bought as a very sad wide-body Carrera, we've done it just simply that way, mainly functionality and within the rules of Targa.
I remember the first time when Grant came home and said he wanted to be part of this, buy into this business. I was frightened. I was scared. I didn't know what to expect.
We spent that whole Christmas holiday period, I guess for most, wasn't a holiday for us. We essentially built a lot of the internal structuring that you see at the workshop today. Cleaned the whole place up, had a big throw out of old junk and stuff. Ian had collected so much stuff over the years that really wasn't of much value.
He needed somewhere to expand because where he was, just one of the numbers. And he had so much to give. And I just thought, I'll trust his judgment, and if he thinks that this is a good thing, let's do it.
We'd just been married in 1996 when I took over the business, and we also bought a house. Nothing like a mortgage to make you commit to something.
At that stage, I was actually a hairdresser, managing a salon, and the only way that we could do it, and Grant knew nothing about computing or business. I knew nothing about it, so we thought, let's do it, let's go for it. So I would come down and I would do the bookwork a few days a week and then manage the salon the rest of the time. It was tough, long days, and I just said to Grant, I said, I'm done with hairdressing, let's do this together. And I became full-time here. So that was a big decision for me because 13 years hairdressing, and that was all I knew, to come to something which I didn't know, but I knew his drive and his passion and where he wanted to take it, and I wanted to be part of that.
I seem to be good at biting off more than I can chew and then just chew like hell to try and get through it all. I don't know how to introduce Adrian. Adrian's just a total pommy git that loves his Porsche Boxster and thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread, but he's...
I was lucky enough to pick up the Porsche in the GFC for about half the price of what I should have paid for it. I probably paid double doing it up, putting bits and pieces on it, upgrading the engine, the brakes. It feels more like my friend's 911 when I'm driving because it's got the 911 suspension on it, but it still feels light and nimble like the Boxster does. It's a bit quicker, the engine sounds more raspy. It's just a fun car to drive now, and it's different to any other Boxster that I see on the road. Me and my friend who's got a Carrera, we took the cars out down through the back of New South Wales, took it all out through the countryside, up into the mountains, had some great drives. I think that's when I really let the car go, and that's when you really start to enjoy the car, not for what it looks like, but you know, how it handles and how it drives. There's a prestige to them, of course. They're nice looking. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years on, they still look really good. It's my daily drive, but it's my weekend car as well to go on drive days in the country.
I've been working on Porsche cars since 2005. I had a small stint on some BMWs for a couple of months at one stage, and they're just not the same. I can't see myself working on anything other than Porsche.
I came from another dealer, not doing Porsches, to a sort of family business, which was a good change because I don't really like the dealership in and out. I compare it to McDonald's, to be honest.
Our customers know that we can't plead ignorance on anything with the cars. We're a specialist, it's what we do. We tell people we're a Porsche specialist. We're not like your typical prestige dealership that may have a Porsche in there from time to time.
So we put new hoses in?
Service, new hoses, new caliper overhauls, so caliper kits, new pads in the front, and machine the discs.
So nothing else extra?
No.
What about the hunting thing and the rich thing?
Tim reset the mixture.
Right.
And he said, as far as I know, he said it was good.
Right. Okay.
He was happy with it.
Cool. How's your island going anyway?
How's my what?
Your island. Bahamas? Or are you still kicking back at Monaco a lot?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Wouldn't have thought your jet had range to get there, but...
No, I sold my jet.
Oh yeah, you just leased it, you're smarter.
No, I bought 2 helicopters instead.
Good.
And a couple of racehorses.
Nice. Anybody else got that?
Mate, that's very swanky, isn't it?
That's the real deal.
That's all the original books there.
Yeah, I'm thinking putting the original radio back in.
Oh.
I'm getting old, aren't I?
It won't work.
No.
The Eurovox, have you still got the Eurovox?
Or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's a Eurovox, mate.
That one?
Yeah. Chris, that guy that's down there in the car?
Yeah.
Talk to him.
Yeah, who
He's
he
the
from?
best. He's mobile.
Oh, is he?
He does every dealer. Every Porsche dealer in Sydney.
Right.
He's the man.
Better than the old clunkers.
Yeah, well, that's what he's doing today. Old clunker.
The automotive industry is full of people who are miserable, which as a petrolhead I've never really understood. You're getting to work with the thing that motivates you and that gets you out of bed in the morning. Autohouse Hamilton is by and large a happy place, and although everyone has days when they aren't quite as sparkly as other days, sometimes it feels like a bit of a treat to be allowed to do what we're doing and still get paid for it.
The first Porsche that I bought happens to be sitting over my right shoulder. It's a fantastic car. It's a 1993 968 Club Sport, factory motorsport edition. I think of this in a way as the predecessor to GT3s. Extra rare, this one, in that it's a non-aircon and no radio version. I got to admit, initially I thought I would be modifying the car heavily, but when you looked at the specs from it from the factory, it was a pretty accomplished piece of machinery and well beyond my limits at that point in time. So I actually left it as it is, standard, and just set it up with a wheel alignment, harness, some safety gear, and tracked it for a year or two without doing anything actually, and I guess call it luck, but managed to win its class championship every year it's ever run. You'll find that the ability to go and do a track day and then be able to drive home, and I got a bit, I think the first 10 rules of our club are about that you've got to be able to drive home, you've got to be able to drive home, etc. And the Porsche mark is absolutely the car to do that. They've got the right balance of engineering around motorsport, yet durability for customers at club level or who are having a spirited drive on the street like myself. In terms of the engine on this, it's something a little different actually. In contrast to, say, 911 with a flat 6, this has got an inline 4. It's a big inline 4. It's got a 3-litre, 4-cylinder, 16-valve with variable timing on the camshafts, which was pretty cutting-edge technology. I believe it had more torque than the Holden 5-litre V8 back in early '93 when it was created. I've often thought about whether I'd get a GT3. It's still there on the list, but I've got to admit, every time I start to look at the lap times that we can now achieve, so I'm doing about a 1 minute 47 on the Grand Prix circuit, and on the same tyres, GT3 road cars, 996s, 997s, are doing 1 minute 46, maybe 45.9, so there really isn't much in it, and I think with a little bit more tuning and work on the suspension, I'm looking forward to giving some of the GT3s more of a run again. This car just loves Bathurst. It's okay on the straights. I get up to about 230, 240 down the straight and into the kink, but the ability to hang out and keep up with all of the 997 GT3s, whether on slicks or semi-slicks, etc. And frankly, you can monster them across the top of the mountain. I don't want to be arrogant, but you really can take it to them.
For more than 8 decades, the name Porsche has been synonymous with engineering expertise and have recorded more victories than any other manufacturer in classic races, such as the 24-hour Le Mans. Ferdinand Porsche believed that design must be functional and functionality must be translated into visual aesthetics. Every part of a Porsche is the residue of sustained focus on function, engineering, excellence, and reliability. He drove to create cars that express power and speed, even while standing still. A small car with abundant power and brakes could accelerate rapidly and also have stopping ability to surpass the larger and more powerful cars. It was this approach that is at the heart of Porsche design and is for most the main attraction. The ideal of simplicity, quality, reliability, accessible engineering and design has been rewarded with car sales volumes that most other sports car manufacturers can only dream of. Ferdinand Porsche's vision and self-belief continues to imbue the design DNA and engineering prowess of today's Porsches. Posters of Porsches continue to adorn the walls of dreamers and be the cars owned by drivers.
As time moves on, you know, these cars one day will become old cars too. It's important that we don't just rest too much on the old cars. That's going to limit our numbers of cars. We've got to just progress with time, the same as Porsche are. And yeah, it's important to work on those modern day cars. Again, there's still avenues there we can look into and get more out of those cars too.
The great things about 911s particularly is that they're everyday cars. They're a car you'll jump in, you know it's going to start if you haven't driven it for a week. It's easy to drive, they're good fun, they're reasonably economical. Well, welcome to the toy shop, as I call it. These are some of my cars. This is my daily driver, I call it, not that I drive it every day. It's a C4S, it's a lovely motor, manual. I think all my cars are manual, yes they are. So this car here is the only right-hand drive 964 RSR that Porsche have ever built. I was stepping up a class, which was fairly exciting, but it's also such an iconic car. It's original. It's a hard car to drive. You've actually got to be driving at 100% to get the most out of them. It's a wonderful noise, the RSR. It's a deep sound, complete roll cage. It's a 5-speed gearbox. They took the standard motor, which was 3.6 litres, out to 3.8 litres, and it produced 300 horsepower. You can tweak them with the exhaust and inlet manifolds, and I think it got up to about 330, 340 horsepower, which is about as much as you can get out of an air-cooled engine. Above that, they start to run a bit hot. This is an anniversary model 964, which I bought from Grant, and I've enlarged the motor to 3.8. I put the spoiler on it. So it's actually like a 964 Carrera RS replica. It's the only replica I have. I guess I've slowed my racing down the last couple of years, partly because of business commitments and partly because some of the Porsches that I race are a little bit outclassed with the modern machinery. This one is the 968 CS, which I used to race. I've done Tigers in it and production sports cars. I'm just taking the front of the roll cage out so I can drive it on the road. They're pretty hard to drive with a full roll cage. If the police find you, I'll end up with a big defect notice. I didn't want that. Collecting cars became almost a little bit out of passion. And when I went racing, I had a $21,000 1972 911S, which is worth another 100 now, I think, more than that. But I flared the guards and made it look like a bit more of a racing car. And when I finished with racing, and I thought, gee, this is a good car, I should hang on to it. And then when this one turned up, I then kept that, and I said to myself, I'm getting a collection here. And then I decided to put James on to look after my cars and bought this place here to start to store them. And so with James restoring them or maintaining them and me going out and collecting good cars as they come on, 1 or 2 a year, the passion is just growing. That was my first race car. I can't believe I raced a car so valuable. That's a 1972 911S 2.4. A 944 S2, which I do Porsche events with, and it's done a couple of Tigers. I have all-year cars and I have winter cars. So I have to come on down and say, for example, the 72S is a winter car, no air conditioning, and they're pretty hot in summer. Pretty hard to look cool when the sweat's running down your nose. One car did 4Ks last year. That's just 4 kilometres, down to get registered and back again. And that just started up after 12 months. Drove down, did the rego check, bring it back again. It was fun. Now that's one of the great things about them. The earlier models take a little bit of throttle modulation to get them going. They're not as happy as the later ones, but yeah, they'll always start first go.
My father is a car nut. Like it's his fault that I am doing what I do and spend all my weekends at the racetrack and drive my poor wife crazy. So we used to go to car races as kids, and yeah, it's his fault. And I've now convinced him to have his midlife crisis now that they're empty. Mum and Dad are empty nesters, and he's just gone and bought a second-hand Boxster.
Caymans. Oh, the Caymans and Boxsters. We had a new Boxster, a brand new Boxster come in a couple of weeks ago. Nice. Wow, yeah.
What was your car anyway?
I had the Meteor Grey 3.2 Carrera.
Oh yeah.
Here, yeah. You delivered it to me once, years ago. You brought it to my house up in Princess Forest.
Oh, was that you?
That was me, yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely my favourite car.
I got my first car when I was 8 from one of Dad's friends. He said, yeah, I have this paddock basher, and Dad taught me how to drive through that, and then he taught me how to get quicker and faster and using the handbrake, and then I just raced around the paddocks, still doing it now. I started doing motorcar in 2007, and between 2007 and 2011 I won 3 state titles, an Australian junior title and state carnicross title. The first time I got into Porsche was 3 days after we got it, and I was 15. It was a serious eye-opener. Pretty much my dream of the new Porsche is to just get quicker than Dad, pretty much just to beat him. Working with Grant's it's great. He definitely knows how to set up a car for the racetrack. He's got the team, the skills, and he definitely has the passion. With the Motec system in the car, we can retrieve data off the car, and they can look at what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, compare it with Dad's data, overlay it with other data, and yeah, it helps you go a lot faster. Living the Porsche is it's awesome. Every time you're in the car, driving the car, it's just an absolute dream. It's awesome fun. I still can't get over it.
It's a bit of an unusual thing with me because most Porsche owners love old Porsche. Porsche is a transitional thing which moves forward. We're high end of the IT, we live on the cutting edge of IT, so I'm a little bit like a ferry Porsche. Somebody once said to ferry Porsche, what's the best Porsche? He said the next one. So hence I'm a guy that likes the current models, just keep moving forward, moving with the technologies, faster, better and safer.
The best Porsche that I've ever owned would be the GT2, which you're leaning up against now. It's just fantastic. It is the most awesome car. It goes unbelievably fast. The acceleration, just everything about it is just unbelievable.
Stock answer should be the newest one. My answer is the 356 because we've modified those for racing for decades, made them go very well for what we've started with, and that's what I race.
917 actually, without a doubt, yeah. 917, so iconic, difficult to drive, particularly in the early years, and it's a beautiful car. Sounds great, looks great, and I'd love to have a go one day. Yeah.
Probably the 73 RS, an affordable car, relatively. But I like the older Porsches.
Well, I'll surprise you about which is the greatest racing Porsche ever built. It's this one. I bought it new in 1984, so I've been driving this car for 29 years. And for 29 years of fanging it, the motor was never open. It was amazing.
Hey, it's a little 76 911 Gemini Blue. Silly question.
I guess the striking one that really stood out in my mind, which was associated with the car itself, was the 9083 that they ran at the Targa Florio and at the Nürburgring, which was the pale blue car with the orange stripe down one mud. Yes, that's the one with the big arrow on the front mudguard.
Oh, that's really difficult to say, but my favorite is a Group C type 962 or 956. It's only 12 centimeter difference between those cars. That was really a fantastic car. During the Grand Prix we raced the 81 Le Mans winner, which is here, the 936 Spider, and that was a great thing. It was a real race, participating by 34 cars, and we finished second, and behind us a very strong car. So that's in the future now, not only to make the demonstrations like here, we want to race them again and preparing the cars for racing.
And it's the first time I've raced on my open licence. I remember I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I bought a little Matchbox Porsche. It was a 911. Fell in love with them from there, and so it's taken me this long now to buy one. Porsche I ever bought was a 911 996. You take it out there, you absolutely flog it. You just give it everything you can. You take it home, put it in the garage, and the next time you take it out, like 4 weeks' time, you take it out again, off you go. And all you got to do is just change the oil and change the tyres. It's unreal. They just go and go and go. Yeah, well, I didn't think I'd ever be able to get into a racing car, let alone racing something as great as this. Yeah, I do own it, I do drive it, and I do pit crew it. so that cuts down on a lot of expenses because we do it all ourselves. I tell you, the most humbling thing I've ever done is this motor racing. Look at that, I'm fourth from the back. If you come into a corner, I've actually got to say to myself, especially coming into this corner down here, is you can do it, it's okay, stay on the track. Because if you think you're going to slide, that's exactly what will happen. So you've got to look ahead, you look as far ahead as you can, and keep a positive attitude, and the car will do the rest. When you drive the car, it's like it connects to every nerve in your body and you can feel everything in the car. It's unbelievable. Like you can feel the road. Like if there's something slippery on the road or a nut or a boulder or even a stone, you can feel it. You feel it through the steering wheel in your hands. You can feel it in your foot on the clutch when you go to put it in. You can feel it on the accelerator when you put it down. You can feel it on the brake when you're braking. You can feel it in the seat through the bottom as you're sitting in it. You can feel it. It's unbelievable. Living the dream. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, my
Cheers.
friend.
Racing started on a whim, really. It was just a phone call from a friend who said that he'd found a second-hand Ford Falcon EA saloon car, and that car at the time was, I think, something like $5,000, repossessed in bad order.
Staring at the sky.
After a very wet and soggy round at Phillip Island once, which is not much fun with a saloon car, I saw these beautiful, sleek Porsche 996s at the time in an early round of the GT3 Cup Challenge when it first commenced a few years back. And I actually jumped on the phone from the pits at Phillip Island to a guy back here in Sydney who worked for a Porsche dealer, said, how do I buy one? There have definitely been a bunch of close calls. There's one sitting on YouTube right now, having to go infield at the chase at 250, 260 kilometres an hour when there was a slowing car just on my line. That could have ended in tears. If the car had gone sideways into the sand, it certainly could have barrel rolled and anything could have happened. Across the board, Carrera Cup over the last few years has been safe and generally respectful racing, but you just don't race at that speed and at those limits without there being incidents. Last October, in the last race, after a very, very good run, found the wall just coming over Skyline. So you have to maintain respect and be very, very aware at all times, because the bottom line is anything going at 270 kilometres an hour is the ability to bite you and bite you hard. I guess a lot of people have the desire, but it's like anything in life, you just need to take some steps towards it. You can race very affordably, and if you're in a pack of cars, it doesn't really matter whether you're doing 120, 220, you're using the same racecraft, you're having the same experience. Naturally in life you want to progress through, so we find ourselves sort of where I'm at the moment, and of course other guys have gone many, many times further than I ever will. You only get one shot. I'm 50 in January, so at the moment I'm hanging in there reasonably well, but I don't want to look back in 10 years or 20 years and say, why didn't I? In terms of the ability to compete with the class of driver that I find myself on the grid with, yeah, I think it is probably as good as it gets realistically at my age with my time availability. I think there's some amazing experiences to be had in addition to Carrera Cup, but I can't think of a better way to hone car and race skills than the very equal, competitive and sprint racing format of Carrera Cup. Actually, if you look down in the garage, my 3-year-old daughter's driving a convertible white 356 electric model, and that's sitting beside mine, so you could be forgiven for thinking it's a Porsche enthusiast family. In terms of just a daily driver, I'm perfectly happy with what I've got. Carrera 991S cab, which is an awesome car, does everything so well. Couldn't think of anything much better, to be honest, but I must say the new Turbo S is right up there, and a couple of classics for good measure.
Yeah, I think everyone had a little bit to do with the Group 4 car. There's a secret little carbon fibre badge that I put on the chassis of that Group 4 car that someone one day will find. But also, I think I did a bit of the interior work and the start button and a couple of suspension components, but everyone sort of worked on that car. I don't think anyone didn't.
That's actually nuts, that car. Yeah, it's just crazy. I don't know how you drive it, actually.
A bit scary by the time you accelerate, you're already at the end of the street, so no burnouts though. You don't do burnouts in Porsches, we don't do that. No.
I had guys telling me, the rallying thing was great and all, but there was no way to make a living, and so I guess the decision to come and be part of Autohouse Hamilton was more of a head decision rather than a heart decision, because I still really enjoy rallying. I like the whole rallying scene. I had this vision that I wanted to build a place and an environment that had a bunch of craftsmen and technicians as opposed to just mechanics. A place where people would come and enjoy working here. and feel like they'd be part of something really, really special. That's what led us to build the Group 4. Iconic 80s tarmac rally car. No one in this country has certainly built one. It was all about, you know, taking something old but then making it a little bit new, a little bit special.
We didn't want to build an out-and-out race car. We wanted more of a street hot rod for someone to take away on the weekend, go and have some fun, maybe go and do half a dozen track days a year, and something that if someone got the urge in the morning, they could jump in and drive to work as well. First thing was it had to be a factory right-hand drive car. I don't care how well people say they convert cars from left to right-hand drive. There is so many things that can be done wrong, it's not funny. It was an English delivered car. They're a little bit known for being rusty, and that was fine because everything was coming off it. We were starting from scratch. We didn't want to build a 400 horsepower race car engine that's going to need a rebuild in 10,000 Ks. We wanted a car with a nicer shifting gearbox in it than the earlier cars with the 915 boxes. Even though we love them, they're nice and light, they are a bit more agricultural than the G50 gearbox cars.
The interior's all Alcantara dash and, you know, door trims and things, and some couple of racing bucket seats and air conditioning. And air conditioning. And Bluetooth. I hate air conditioning.
because of all the pipes and hoses and things.
Yeah.
It's nice on a day like today.
But it just looks ugly.
Yeah.
I love every model of Porsche from the beginning to the current car. But for me, I find it hard to go past the classics, you know. Classic cars are all metal parts, are all bolted together. There's so much more mechanical noise. All modern cars of today are all really quiet inside. They're just not quite the same.
So go on, just for a sound check, just introduce us to the room and who's in there and what are you doing?
Hi, this is the engine room.
Perfect.
Run by Matt.
Don't worry about that, because that's outside the anamorphic marks. Okay. Yep. Quite like it. What? Quite like
What
it.
was that technical jargon that just went?
Anamorphic.
Yeah.
We're shooting this all long and thin, like cinema screen.
Okay.
It's the same aspect ratio that feature films use. So when you look at this, you're going to get that implicit association that you're watching.
A feature film as opposed to video, which is more square. This will be really long and thin.
Show it on the big screen.
Oh yeah.
What kind of car is it?
It's a Porsche.
A Porsche, oh, I should have guessed. It's gorgeous. It really is.
Do you like the stripes?
I love that. I was just going to say, I love the things at the back. The colours, the red and the black look great against the white of the car. And the roof. Oh no, that's beautiful.